Hello and welcome to Crux Investor. We caught up earlier today with James Anderson. He is the CEO at VanGold Mining. Since we last spoke at the beginning of January, they have raised a shy of $17 million. They've issued PEA on their two assets, one of which they've just closed on, Cubo. And they've made some new hires, but they've got 300 new hires more to get through. So he talks to us about how he's going to do that and to what end. If you want our thoughts and opinions on the conversation, you can find that at cruxinvestor.com/club, where you can also find detailed company reports and analysis. There's commentary from experts from all over the world on a variety of companies and commodities, including precious metals. We've got training courses on there to help you with your diligence process. We've done summaries of all of the interviews that we've done just to save you some time because we know you're busy people. But most importantly of all, there's a thriving and wonderful community of investors sharing their thoughts and ideas with each other in a nice, friendly and safe environment, free from judgment, trolling and abuse. And I hope you think that sounds nice because it is. So why don't you go and join them at cruxinvestor.com/club. We'd love your feedback too. So give us a like. We appreciate it. Leave your thoughts below. We'll get back to absolutely everyone. And if you want to see precisely what we talked to James about today, do take a look in the description below. James, how are you?
Excellent. How are you doing?
Not too shabby, as they say in these parts. Yes, it's been a wonderful sort of spring weekend. Invigorated, raring to go. Same with you?
Yeah, here too, in beautiful downtown North Vancouver. And we live on the edge of Grouse Mountain. So beautiful spring day. Got a chance to play a little soccer on the weekend. And the flowers are out. It's lovely.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, hey, we caught up at the halfway through January. You got quite busy pretty quick after that. Fundraise, PAs, acquisitions. There's lots to talk about. So we better get on with it. But before we do, can you give me that 1 minute overview for people new to the story, and I'll pick it up from there.
Sure. The name of the company is VanGold Mining. We're active in the mineral exploration and development business in gold and silver in central Mexico, in a place called Guanajuato, Mexico. We've got two assets. One was our first asset, which was a past producer about 100 years ago, a really great exploration project. What we entered into in December and closed finally just 1 week ago with Endeavour Silver was to purchase their mine and mill called El Cubo. And that will change the company very dramatically and puts us on a path to being in production from both of those assets in the fall.
Excellent. Okay. To enable that, you raised some money just after we spoke, nearly $17 million. Easy raise?
Yes. You know, raising money is never easy in this business, but generally speaking, yeah, certainly a lot easier than the last few years. I know the last several months have not been great in the precious metals camp, but the last couple of years have. There's a lot more interest, a lot more money. Also, there was a lot of interest in our business plan, changing from strictly an exploration company, of which there are many, to becoming Canada and Mexico's newest silver and gold producing company. And so a lot of people very interested in getting on board that story. And
was that's the reason I ask, because precious metals come off a bit since, towards the end of December last year. Funders have been funding, but smaller projects. But $17 million is not loose change. It's a lot of money here. Were they looking at you from the point of view being a near-term producer rather than just another exploration story? Was that the thing that got it over the line?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I think the idea about getting a re-rating in the marketplace as a producer, and I think to some degree that has happened. So I think investors are going to be generally happy about that.
Right, and obviously at today's prices, that looks like a cheap raise.
Right.
Okay, because I think when we spoke, around the time of the raise, you're about 24 cents, 59 cents today. So that has worked, but that's going to put some pressure on you. You've now got to deliver. So I think first thing out of the gate that I saw was you managed to get put the PEAs out on both the projects. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And we were able to construct a PEA around both projects. So they call it the El Cubo and Pinguico PEA.
Yeah,
that's up on our website.
But you didn't own El Cubo at the time. So how did you manage to do that?
Well, we had an LOI signed in December and announced that, right? And all of the work done by Bear, which is our engineering firm from the United States, in anticipation of that, We had them go and see El Cubo and Pinguico, spend 4 days, because you have to go to the project when you're writing this, despite the fact that a lot of it's tabletop and computer driven these days. But they spent 4 days with us at Pinguico and El Cubo in November, looking at the mine and the mill, and establishing some baseline criteria about where we're going to spend some money and how we're going to put it back into operation.
Right. Okay. So that they did it in anticipation of the acquisition getting over the line, which it did shortly thereafter. Market has reacted quite positively to the news. So what did the PEA tell people?
Well, so a whole bunch of different things, and probably even some surprises from internally, right? So I guess one thing that I'd like to point out, Matthew, when what's in the PEA and what some people don't quite get about this acquisition, because we're not just buying a mill, but there is a significant resource that still exists there. Because it's a PEA level, none of that material ends up in a reserve category or in a proven category. So it's all indicated and inferred by their methodology, but that's fine for us. But there's about 500,000 tons of indicated and 1.5 million tons of inferred material at Cubo. So if you look at the combined operation, and this is something that I'd like to stress for people who are watching, it kind of looks like Cubo and Pinguico are, twins. Well, from a resource standpoint, that's just not the case, right? 90% of the resources that we have now are at El Cubo, and it's good grade. The the inferred material is better grade than the indicated material. It's about 425 grams of silver equivalent versus about 380. But for our purposes, I just flop all those together and call it 400 grams of silver equivalent for all of it. So it's good grade, and at 750 tons a day, that lasts 7.5 years. So the engineers at Bear Dolbear have constructed a 7.5 year time frame for us to consume that 2 million tons.
Right. So just in terms of, there's a few things going on there. Obviously, PEA, but you're talking about getting in production well before the end of this year. That's an accelerated time frame. So what are the things with what you know today? We'll talk about land packages and exploration in a second, but with what you've just acquired, what you already had at Pinguico, how do you go from PEA to production in what is less than, about 6 months, right?
Well, I think the first key is the mill. So this mill was running up until November of 2019. So we've got a pretty good handle on what we need to order, what we need to do to polish it up and get it running again. In terms of material that's in sight, there's enough low-hanging fruit that we can see, in stopes at El Cubo and the surface stockpile at Pinguico that's readily available. You can reach out and touch it, and we can start to put material through the mill.
But it's like, well, actually, I'll come in with a question sent in, which is basically, I'll kind of read it, which is regards to the waste material there. If you look at the PEA page 56, quote, there are serious questions as the bulk of the stockpile is unsampled. So how do you know what you've got there? Is it, it could be just wall waste material. I mean, there's all sorts of scenarios. So what gives you some certainty about what you have?
Right. So it is confusing, but I appreciate the question. Let me take you through that. So there's two stockpiles. The stuff that's on surface, there's very few questions about it. It's about we'll call it 185,000 tons. That's what the PEA reads. It's of moderate grade. It's 107 grams of silver equivalent, but it's right on surface. It's waste material. You can stand on it. You can look at it. We've taken backhoes and gone down 2 meters to sample the stuff. It goes about 20 meters in depth, right? So that's one stockpile, and Bear Dolbear gives us full credit for 185,000 tons of that. Underground is different. There's 150,000 tons of material down there. So says the Mexican Geological Survey in 2012. Okay, I think there is, but our engineering firm has decided, no, we're not going to give you credit for 150,000 tons down there. We're only going to give you credit for 25,000 tons, which is the first 5-meter veneer on the top of it, because they feel that's the part that's been sampled correctly, which is trenching on a number of different occasions. There was an attempt a few years ago to try and drill that stockpile using a diamond drill. That didn't work very well. And frankly, that was prior to me becoming involved with the company. I wouldn't have done that. You're going to have a diamond drill bouncing into unconsolidated material with a whole bunch of water. The chances of coming up with any precious metals in that drilling is very slim. So what we're doing right now, and I think your listeners can be becoming impatient, getting underneath that stockpile has proved more timely than what we first looked at, and a lot of that just has to do with safety parameters. There's areas of the mine where we've been able to get into and walk around and it's fine. There's areas of the mine, 110-year-old mine, that have collapsed, and we're trying to be as careful as possible in accessing them.
Okay, so your PEA is valuing or attributing what value to both those stockpiles?
Well, 185,000 tons and only 25,000 tons. So we really didn't, we argued with Bear Dolbear a little bit about this, but not much, because even those two stockpiles at Pinguico, add them up, soaking wet, they're still only 10% of the whole global resource at this point, because almost all of it comes from El Cubo. Right.
Okay. Well, let's come back to the mill, because that's the first thing you mentioned as to how you go from PEA stage to production. And production means different things. So there's going to be a ramp up, presumably. So with regards to how do you need to do anything to the mill? I know it was working relatively recently, but it's still going to need some upgrade, isn't it?
Yeah, it still needs work. It needs new belts and hoses and fans and stuff like that. We may well be in need of a tertiary crusher. Endeavour moved that away some months ago. We knew that ahead of time. So there'll be a decision made in the next 10 days or so about what we're going to do in that regard, where we're going to buy it, how we're going to buy it. But the mill can operate without that for a time, not nearly as efficiently. So we may choose to do that. So that's the only long lead time item. And I'm 300, 400 grand, something like that. Within the body of the PEA, Bear Dolbear says that we need $1.7 million US to refurbish the mill. Within the PEA, I think some of their numbers are a little high, some of their numbers are a little low. That number I think is a little low. We're budgeting about $2.5 million US for the refurbishment. I think there's a whole bunch of other little things, when you're doing when you're refurbishing your home, you start with one wall, but it gets another one. I suspect that it's going to be a little bit like that in the mill. But all of my Mexican partners have their heads screwed on straight about what this is supposed to be. We're not building a brand new mill, and we're putting it together so that we can have cash flow as early as reasonably possible.
Okay, so let's get on to that. So you're going to have to feed this mill. What will it be putting through each day, or what will you hope when it is fully optimized, be putting through each day?
Right. So the mill can do 1,500 tons a day and has routinely over the last 6 or 8 years. We will start off at about 300 or 400 tons a day, and within 60 or 90 days, work up to 750 tons a day. We've got the material to do that, both from Cubo and Pinguico. And I see no reason why we can't do that.
Right, and you have the money to be able to get that to the mill, feed that mill, and the idea from what you're saying is get some cash flowing and hopefully at more optimal rates as well. So you've got a whole bunch of land, you've got a bunch of money now. What else is on the itinerary between now and September? Because it can't just, I guess getting the mill up and running is going to occupy you, but not fully.
It does. That's our main focus. Attracting more people, attracting more good quality people to the company. We've got maybe 250 or 300 people to hire in Guanajuato. So that's a big task. We've already hired pardon me, sort of a skeleton crew of managers, who most of which have El Cubo experience. If they don't, they've got Mexican mining experience. This is going to be the most Mexican mining operation that you will see, and it's relatively easy to hire people around Guanajuato, Matthew. If you're hiring people from, to put a mine in production in the middle of Africa or in the middle of the Northwest Territories, you've got a certain small subset of people to be able to attract. Guanajuato is a beautiful city. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. There's 150,000 people who live there, and there's a bunch of different mining operations all over. So we get to hire a lot of people with a lot of experience, especially people with experience at El Cubo.
Okay, I suppose there's a lot of people who used to work there too, right? So I suspect they'll know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Will Endeavour help with that? Do they give you a sort of the former HR list or something?
So we've hired an HR manager who worked at El Cubo actually before Endeavour bought it. Right. Okay, so about a dozen years ago, and that comes from the north of Mexico, but has worked in mining. I think at last count, he had been given about 500 CVs of people, interested in joining our team. So I think the opposite will be true about, attracting the numbers of people. It's okay, how do we sift through these people and come up with the team that we want? But we've been doing that for a number of months. As you know, Gabriela Ponce from Guanajuato worked for 5 years at El Cubo. She's in charge of exploration at Pinguico right now. Antonio Neto is in charge of safety and security, and we hired him a number of months ago. So we've already sort of had a 200-meter head start in a 1,500-meter race.
Yeah, good. Well, good, and I think obviously the town will benefit from that too. A question also sent in with regards to Fresnillo. They've got a mine and mill which is sitting in care and maintenance, has been for several years. Is that something of interest to you, or are you expecting Fresnillo to kind of ramp things back up there? I mean, what's happening next door? So
let me answer that question broadly, and then I'll come down and answer that specifically. Yeah. So broadly speaking, remember we're dealing with a 480-year-old mining camp. There's all kinds of different opportunities here. And there's opportunities, the very first time that I went there to Guanajuato, there's 4 mills within 30 kilometers of one another, and not one of them was being fully utilized. So of course, I'm thinking, well, this is ripe for consolidation, and I think that VanGold is the right size and has the right people and the right momentum to be able to help consolidate the industry in the whole area. So there's a number of different opportunities like that. With regards to Fresnillo, so it's an interesting situation. The Fresnillo mill and part of their very large land claim block is immediately adjacent to Pinguico. Okay, and we had a notion before we were going to buy El Cubo. We had a notion, well, maybe we can use that mill. I got a tour of that mill almost 2 years ago now. And at that time, the mine manager told me that they were adamant about having the mill and the mine back up in operation in March of 2020. So just over a year ago. That didn't happen. And at first we kind of put it off to COVID things, but that's still not happening. Fresnillo is a very large company, as you know. I think it's got a 10 or a 12 billion pound market cap. It is the world's largest silver mining company. And as wonderful as Guanajuato is, as much as I love it, these are narrow, good grade, but narrow vein epithermal systems. I'm not sure that Fresnillo can take any one of those mines and actually affect the bottom line of that giant company. Therefore, I think that there's ample opportunity for us to work with them. What they want to do exactly, I'm not sure, but a number of our board members of our Mexican team have a number of different contacts at Fresnillo. So having a conversation with them is a very real thing.
Okay, but not yet.
Well, there's only so many things that we can do at once. I think it would be a mistake to try and do too many things at once. I think, we've seen mining companies do that. Mining is a capital intensive business. There's only so many people. There's only so much money that we have to be able to drive through this. And as I was mentioning to you just before we got on camera, we've only actually owned El Cubo for 1 week today. Now, I know we've been talking about it since the end of December, but with lawyers and PEAs and financings back and forth, we've only been the actual owners of El Cubo for 1 week. So it'll take a little bit of time, but there's ample possibilities in the region.
Okay. Look, I appreciate that. Well, if you're hiring 300 plus people, is time consuming. That's a job in itself for sure. But you are going to need to lay the ground for some of the future work. Okay, for instance, you acquired an underground drill. Is that just parked up, ready to go, or is that actually been doing anything? Is there going to be any drilling happening between now and getting this mill of yours up and operational?
Yeah, okay. So we did buy the drill. It arrived in January. We've been drilling holes. We drilled 4 test holes. And when I say test holes, I mean we were testing the drill, right, to allow our drillers to take it for a test drive. We then moved it underground, and we've drilled a number of holes underground as well. One thing that I will say, and I just want to sort of caution shareholders, this project, although we can get underneath it and we can see old waste material and we can feel and touch some of the vein material, geologically, there's a lot we don't know about it. So we're kind of babes in the woods. This is the first real drill program that anybody's ever done on it. So, and there's the normal delays. I know in North America, it's months and months to get assays back. There are delays. We use SGS in Durango. They're operating at about 30% capacity apparently. So, when we come with news, we'll try and put it together in a way that is meaningful for shareholders and observers. But I also just go back to Pinguico currently has about 20%, 10% of our resource base. El Cubo has 90. Now that we own it, drilling holes at El Cubo into areas that have inferred and indicated material to upgrade those so that we have more confidence, we know more about what we're doing when we're extracting that material for the mill, that's going to very quickly become a priority. Okay,
so you've started a process of testing out the equipment. You are going to lay out a plan of attack when it comes to drilling where, how many meters. You haven't yet issued guidance on that, have you?
We haven't, and I'm not exactly sure how to express it because that drill's going to be, turning continuously from here on out.
Are you going to buy another one?
I'd love to, and I've picked out the drill that we want. Hernan and I keep arguing about which one we might want to have. The only trick is, right, I mean, we're driving towards production and making sure that we've got material in place and a mill that's ready to go. And I think that if we were shy money because James Anderson went out and bought another drill so we could drill some more holes in the ground, I think that would not be a very good business maneuver. So that may well have to be put off for a quarter or two.
Love that. The ultimate boys' toys. Lovely. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, I'm an explorationist by nature, right? I mean, there's nothing that's more exciting to me than trying to find silver and gold in the ground.
Have you picked a color?
Well, VanGold blue, of course.
So I had to ask. It's like you get excited about stuff like that. Okay. Okay. So that will do enough of a job for you to start informing you as to where you go, how you go about it. But if you're not allowed to go out and buy your own gold and blue drill, contracting, is that a possibility? I don't know because it seems quite busy in Mexico at the moment.
Yeah, it is. I've got 3 different quotes from different drilling contractors on my desk. I have had them for 60 or 90 days. Again, as we move through the process of actually buying El Cubo, can't drill on something that you don't own. So we'll be looking at how we move forward on that this week, and in consultation with Hernan, who's running the show here, and Gerardo, his father, also a mining engineer, who's our country manager down there.
Okay. Talk to me about Mexico for a moment, okay? Because there's been a few, obviously, precious metals come off, which is fine. You know, everyone's, most charts have show the same sort of profile. Yours has kind of bucked the trend along with a handful of others. But there's a few sort of unsavory headlines coming out about the Mexican president and his views on mining. And there's a couple of companies in country, perhaps you're having a little bit more than an argument with the Mexican government. Is it business as usual, or do these things have a negative effect on your ability to do business? Has it slowed things down?
It hasn't slowed down things for us, but you know, there's a lot to unpack in what you've just said. Let's start with the top. So it's the fellow is a socialist president, right? My next comment would be, we have a socialist prime minister in Canada. And is he affecting business here? Oh, yes, absolutely. The left-leaning party in the United States is now in charge. And at least in Congress, there are members of that caucus who are very left-leaning. Is that going to affect business down there? Yeah, it will. And you know, maybe that's a little bit further off. So, you know, what can you do about that? Do your business, right? And do it correctly. Again, you and I talked a moment ago about some of the many challenges that Mexico in particular has. Huge tourist industry. Well, nobody's flying there from Canada and the United States to get away from the snowy weather anymore. Obviously, oil has rebounded smartly over the last few months, but that oil collapse really hurts Mexico, and all of the border friction between their big northern neighbor. That's, you know, those are issues. From us, though, I think that it's unmistakable that in Mexico the mining industry is really important. All of the politicians know that, especially in the states that are specifically mining centric. Most of our liaising is with state and local officials. So generally, we've been very encouraged, especially in with El Cubo, Matthew, because El Cubo's been in production for about 200 years, right? Every Mexican geologist knows it. They know where it is and what it is. It's an iconic, historic asset. And the Mexicans locally want to see it back in production.
I know, but that's always tough. I'm more interested in what's happening today rather than what history dictates or nostalgia. It's got to be. I'm asking you today. You're not coming across any objections or barriers that aren't part of normal everyday mining process.
We're not, but I don't want to overplay that card. Because I think that if there are going to be any of those, they're probably still in our future. We just got, we put our news release a couple of weeks ago regarding getting permits for roads, right? There's places there's other places in North America today where that takes years, right? This took a number of months, and really it's about filing forms and making sure that different levels of government know what you're doing. I think one of your viewers wanted to ask about blasting permits. Those are tricky in Mexico, and ultimately, depending on the type of blasting permit that you get, you have to go right up to the Mexican army to get blasting permits. With regards to Pinguico, we're just in the final stages of getting the type of blasting permit that would allow us to do construction underground, and that's going to, a lot of the delays that we've had is that we've been working without that blasting permit, so that's going to expedite things a great deal. And at El Cubo, as part of the acquisition from Endeavour, we constructed a kind of a lease agreement with Endeavour to be able to use the blasting permit that they have in place while VanGold's is being processed. Okay.
Well, yeah, I did want to ask you about that. No, I don't need to. You happy with how much you paid? Could you got El Cubo for a lot less? Done the deal better?
Oh yeah. Look, I mean, I don't want to and Endeavor Silver have been great. We have an excellent relationship both in Mexico and up here with those guys. So I have to be a little careful about how I advertise this, but I think we've gotten an absolutely spectacular deal here. And moreover, so our new advisor, Ramon Davila. So I don't know if you and I have spoken about him. Ramon joined our advisory board. Ramon, in my estimation, has the best mining CV in Mexico. He was the chief operating officer of First Majestic for 10 years, from when it went to 2 employees to 4,000 employees. And when it went from 0 production to 12 million ounces of silver equivalent production per year. So that's our guy. And then he left and was the economy minister of the state of Durango for 4 years. He's joined our advisory board. He's going to have a bigger and bigger role in our company as we move forward, okay? But Ramon went to El Cubo last week for the first time in 20 years. And I talked to Ramon for a couple hours the subsequent evening, and he just said, look, it's a tremendous asset. You've done such a good job in buying this for such a modest amount of money. 15 million bucks. I know I keep harping on it, but the last time this thing changed hands was for $200 million in 2012. And then $40 million additionally was spent on it, on the mill, to give us basically the mill that we've got today. So do I think that we've gotten a good deal here? Absolutely.
Okay, James, look, I appreciate the update. Stay in touch. You're moving things along at a pace, so I'd be surprised if there's more to tell us again soon. So I appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Matthew. I'll talk to you real soon.